Certification course, also a correspondence course. You can be seated here in the auditorium. Welcome all of you that are watching online from the many countries of Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, Nigeria, Kenya, the Philippines. Such a large group in the Philippines we have that call us now. It's awesome that everybody is tuning into these classes. It's great that everybody is coming together to learn the peaceful solution and that we can spread this throughout the world. And of course, there's many other countries that are, even in Malawi, I know they're working really hard right now to get those things set up over there. And some people are more challenged than we are when you think about what we have, and sometimes we think that everyone has the same opportunities, and you learn very quickly, man, the world's very different depending on where you're at. And we're really at an advantage here in the United States, and we should be thankful for it, for everything we have. We're going to pick up here. Of course, we're in the responsibility unit, and once again, hopefully everybody's downloaded this book, the responsibility unit, the PDF that you have there online, and you want that because it's searchable. You can download that on your computer. You can search the text, and if you have a PDF reader, you can do what I do for my children. We put the PDF text in the computer, and you just click it to read, and it'll read the book to them. And of course, that's how some children were taught how to read, was using these actually PDF files and going through it that way. So take them and use them at your advantage. Be diligent with them, and be as diligent as you can with getting these things out there. We have people calling us continually, can we print books in our country? You absolutely can, as long as you print them exactly as the file shows. We have many different translations. So you just have to let us know which translation you're looking for. If we have that translation, we'll readily send it to you. But you're more than welcome to print those books and to distribute them. That is fine, as long as they're done exactly as we have set the files and no changes are made. That's very important, that no changes are made. But of course, this is the 5th unit, and we're going to be tying it back together. We're going to try to get through and finish this chapter tonight, because we're going to want to get into chapter 7 after I'm done with the next 2 classes. But if you turn back over to page 114 and hold your finger there, because we're going to go back to the procedure. And David last week was teaching, and I would advise anyone that has any family members that's in a correctional facility, go back and watch his last 2 classes. One thing David has done for years, he's taught in correctional facilities. And I've had the privilege of traveling with him and Catan and William, going into these facilities that he was teaching up in Arkansas for a long time. And these people had a very high regard for him, of how well he connected with them that were in those facilities. And, there's something that is there that brings forth hope to the people. And connecting with people like that sometimes can be a challenge. You have to have true empathy, and you have to really care. And a lot of things that he was speaking about last week are things that I've seen him present, as well as other peaceful solution instructors present in correctional facilities. And people connect with those things, and it gives them hope. And we've seen people come out of the institutions, the correctional institutions, and they're here today. In fact, some of you are sitting in the auditorium today, and where society told you couldn't become any better, you were a nuisance, incorrigible. Now you're actually teachers of peace, helping society be a benefit to itself. And it just shows how all people need is education. And that's what David was talking about last class. And we're going to look over here to procedure 7 on LP 6D. So LP 6D and procedure 7. This is where David was at. And he got through this quite a bit, but he brought a lot of information that was very much needed to get into our minds to really tie some of this stuff together. And it says, tell students that just as people learn how to be violent and aggressive, they can also learn to be compassionate and respectful toward others. And always remember that these behavioral traits are learned. It's very important. It goes all the way back to the character unit, where we talked about a VIP, and you've heard me talk about that section numerous times, about becoming a VIP and forming habits. And then mirror, you're looking in the mirror, and there it is. You find those things around pages 163 to 165 in the character unit. And it's very important because all of these things are taught. We even talked about racism in the respect unit, and also the acceptance unit, how that is a learned behavior. No one is born racist, but racism is taught. And people tend to think racism, back when I was growing up, racism was considered, a black and white thing. Now racism is considered Middle Eastern, Hispanic. You can throw in any flavor of ethnicity that you want to, and there's somebody that hates somebody. And it's very sad because all of that has been taught. All of that has been taught. And when you think about the actions of a few, you start judging nations because of the actions of a few. Could you imagine, and this is what's taking place with the United States right now, and it's not the actions of a few, it's the actions of a lot of people, where countries are looking at us right now. We're called the Great Bully. I know some countries call the Great Satan is what they call the United States, because of the immorality that is being pushed here. And a lot of people will always ask, if this program's so great, why is it not working in the United States? And we tell them, hey, we took the greatest challenge. If you think the United States isn't the greatest challenge, everyone agrees. No, the United States is the greatest challenge because that is the country that has the most freedom, the biggest economy, and people tend not to care until they get into trouble. And that's the way the United States is really based. People don't really care until they have to care. And that's a sad part because we're many years past having to care. So going back here, once again, I only say that because we want to make sure the students always remember these things are learned behaviors. Very important. But back here to procedure 7, when all members of society are morally responsible to each other's crime, violence, and aggression will be a thing of the past. So when everyone is morally responsible, these things can actually disappear. Not overnight, but over a period of time. Have students turn to pages 114 and 115 in their handbooks and read the section, Education is the Answer. As homework, have students do the activity on page 115. So turning over back to page 114, and this is where David was talking about. We're just going to do a little bit of rehearsal and then get into the rest of this because we don't have much to go before we get into what I have learned. But once again, at the very top of the page, it said, if prisons and correctional institutions do not teach people to be morally responsible to each other, what does? And remember, what is a correctional facility supposed to be? Well, it's supposed to be a place where if you've committed a crime, you're supposed to be rehabilitated. Well, rehabilitated to what? To return back to what you were before you committed the crime? Well, before you committed the crime, you were thinking about committing the crime and you were being programmed to commit the crime. And that's the thing we kind of leave out. Crimes are not committed overnight. It's a time period where this character is, you can't say built up, but more or less degraded down to the point to where the compassion and the care is gone. And people can do things like on a whim, like I don't know why I did that. But if you go back and look at their life, there's a whole story that will tell why a person did that. And of course, it's a slow learning process to either make a right choice or a wrong choice. But when we make that choice, we can go back and look at our lives and see what has been done. And we'll get back into that here in a moment where we start talking about how we're influenced again, because we've talked about influences a lot. We talked about it in the character unit. We really went into details about friendships and the influences and conformity and peer pressure in the acceptance unit. We talked about it again through the self-control unit. We're talking about how things are programmed and the way things are done and how the entertainment industry, whether it be music or movies, and even fellow siblings, how these things all work together. And even an example we'll bring up again tonight and read out of the self-control unit here in a minute, where it's even been a test to see how quick they can get you to respond to something through advertising. So these things are very important that we realize. Learn behaviors over a period of time. Learn behaviors over a period of time. Now, how can we get into getting these things fixed? When we go into correctional facilities, we start out with a character unit. No matter what country we go into, we start out with a character unit. It was written for 10 to 13-year-olds. But if we find that, and I have heard this many times in prison facilities, and we have been in just run-of-the-mill facilities where people are free to walk around, and we've been in maximum security prisons. And I have found that maximum security prisons in the general population, you find some of the most genuine people because they realize they're there for a long time, and a lot of them just want to know, I got to survive in here, but I'd like for someone to tell me how the hell I got here. And I've heard that exact quote. How in the hell did I get here? And a lot of them spend the first, 5 or 10 years just trying to figure out, how it went wrong, but they're still trying to survive in prison. And we were in Tennessee one time in a maximum security prison, and we were teaching, and one man stood up, and he was in there for a murder charge. He wasn't getting out. He was a lifer. And he stood up, he goes, "Why did no one ever tell me this when I was growing up? Nobody said a word about this stuff when I was growing up. I was just let go, let free, do what I wanted to do, and no one told me anything that you're telling me right now. And if somebody would have taught me this when I was younger, I could have been a different person." And you know what? He's exactly right. He could have been. But my question is, why does society not allow him the opportunity to be trained? And he is being trained, and he's still taking classes to this day. He's been doing it for about 6 years now. So that says a lot, because he is getting an opportunity now. He's not going to get out of prison, sadly, but he's still getting an opportunity to be retrained in his way of thinking. Why? Because education is the answer. And you could go in more detail about this, and I'm not here to bash the criminal justice system of the United States, but even the senators, and I won't mention their names here in the state of Texas, who are on the Judiciary Committee, when we met with them in Washington, D.C., concerning implementing the peaceful solution into the prisons, made it quite clear. Prisons are businesses. We get customers in, and we get money that pays for us to house them. We get the cost down. The surplus goes to the man that owns the prison. Most people don't know that prisons here in the state of Texas, really, a lot of them, and across the nation, are privately owned. They're businesses. And you want to get as many customers as you can in there, which are inmates. And you want them to be low problems. And when they start getting sickly and old and you got to pay medical benefits, it's time to parole them and get them out of here. And that's the way things are done. And it's not bashing the criminal justice system. They openly talk about this themselves. And one of the senators, and there were a few of the teachers from the Peaceful Solution that were in that meeting. I think there were 6 of us with 2 senators, one from the state of Texas, one from the state of Iowa. They're still on the Judiciary Committee. And we were telling them how this program could help with recidivism. It could help reduce people returning to prison. And one of the senators, very calmly, I'll give him one thing, he's an honest man when it came to what he said. He leaned over the table and he said, I have friends that own prisons, and you're telling me you got a way to reduce their customers? He goes, I don't think they're going to like that. And I looked at him and I said, well, I'll give you one thing. You're honest, but not smart, but you're honest. And I said, these prisoners that you're talking about here, we have to live with this stuff on the outside. And if we don't educate, we're just going to keep filling and filling and filling. But he was looking at it from a business perspective. And sadly, I don't look at it that way. I look at it from how society has to live by a common body of rules, morality, to have peace. But anyway, education being the answer, start thinking about, and this is one thing the author Israel Hawkins, he even offered to the nation of Egypt. And we met with the nation of Egypt 6 times. And it was, if we start educating the children at a very young age, let's get them at 4 and 5 years old. Let's start teaching them morality. Let's start teaching them how to make choices based on morality. And everyone agreed it's the best way. Everyone agreed. And then there were little hiccups where people, well, can we change this in the book? No, absolutely not, because that's what's going to bring forth a change. Because these books are not based on religion. They're not based on ethnicity. We do allow changes in Africa. If you get a Peaceful Solution book from Africa, all the names are African names. So we do adapt our books into different cultures. If you go into Nigeria and get a character education unit, you'll have news articles instead of from the United States. You'll get them from Nigeria because that's what affects their country. So those things are acceptable. But rewording something to fit into a tradition of a country, which is bringing forth a problem, the Peaceful Solution can never do. And that's what we ran into. It was, let us just change this one thing. Just this one thing right here. And the one thing people didn't like was, let's just don't use that word premarital sex. Let's just don't use that. Well, what would you like to use? Promiscuous? What other words would you like to use? Well, let's just don't say anything bad about it. Let's just say it's acceptable. And it's like, well, sorry, can't do that. You know, that's like saying the sun is up, but it's nighttime. It just don't work. You know, and why am I saying this? Because education is the answer, and we have to be responsible for giving the right answer. Just giving an answer isn't going to fix a problem. If you give the wrong answer, you haven't done anything but hurt yourself and society. We have to give the right answer, and to get that answer, we have to be educated ourselves. And of course, here where it says education is the answer, notice it says the key word in the question is the word teach. And of course, we have a saying here at the Peaceful Solution: we need to learn what to teach so we can teach what we've learned. And it's through application, not just by hearing something, but through hearing it and applying it. Because we can all agree, developing a positive character is a challenge. It's not easy to do. We all gonna, make mistakes, and we're gonna make bad choices. We need to limit the bad choices and really kind of alleviate the mistakes in our lives and try to do as the best we can. And of course, we have to adapt in, accepting personalities, but all molding that character that we need to have. That, morality of character should be unison. And it doesn't matter if you're from China, Russia, Iran, the United States, the UK. All of us should be building that morality. But sadly, there's a lot of immorality that is supported that's tearing down society. Well, you can teach immorality or you can teach morality. We're talking about teaching morality. Notice here it says, remember, responsibility is developed through instruction and practice. Remember, value, imitate, practice. How does it become a habit? Practice, practice, practice. And that's on page 73 of the character unit, where we have to keep applying these things within ourselves. Well, by studying the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, you are learning the value of being responsible to yourself and others. Well, remember, being responsible to yourself, being respectful to yourself. Remember, you have to respect yourself before you're going to be able to respect anyone else. And the same thing with being responsible. If you're not responsible for your own things, you most likely won't be responsible for other people's items either. Continuing on, it says, in order to improve our society, each individual, including prisoners, must be taught to be responsible for his or her own thoughts, actions, and attitudes. So once again, it's a teaching process. Then you don't give up on anyone. As long as there's life, there's opportunity. And what better place do you have than a place where everybody is there 24 hours a day, where you can actually have a class, when usually the only thing they're doing is playing dominoes, playing cards, watching TV, playing Dungeons and Dragons, trying to drag out a game for 15 years because they've got so much time on their hands. They create things. And, people talk about inventions. You want to see the greatest inventors? Go to a prison. There's things invented and done in prisons that you cannot imagine can actually be done with plastic toothbrush, a paper toilet roller, and all kinds of other things. They can come up with some very interesting things, ideas. But this is what their time is put to, because there's nothing else to take up their time. Now, I will admit there are some prisons I've been to in Virginia, Missouri. They make mattresses, they make furniture. Some in Nebraska, they make church pews. So there are some prisons that actually have jobs for their inmates. And that's great to have a trait. Come in and learn a trait, or you already knew the trait and you come in and you're able to occupy your time. But that still doesn't take away the importance of learning morality, because it was the immorality that got them there. Obviously, there's an education that was missing, is why they're working at the prison to begin with. So these things go hand in hand. Learning a trait, absolutely something that's necessary and important. Any trait, just find a trait and learn something. You'll always benefit from it. But you have to tie it together with character education. Notice here in the second paragraph, character education must be taught at home. That's where it really starts, and that's what we said in the character unit. It starts at home, at school, and in prisons. In the same manner that prisons are taught vocational skills and are allowed to earn high school diplomas and college degrees, they can also be taught character education. By eliminating negative character traits such as violence, aggression, selfishness, and greed, while developing positive traits like respect, self-control, compassion, Prisoners and everyone else in society can learn the value of being morally responsible toward themselves or toward others and themselves. When correctional institutions combine vocational and educational skills along with character education, they can teach inmates to become morally responsible. So once again, all of these things are needed, and everybody can benefit from these things being put together, bringing all of these pieces together. Well, how are you being influenced? Notice here, and we're going to go back and read a couple things that we've already talked about before, but it says, in addition to getting an education in positive character, people must also be aware of how they are being influenced. Notice, television, movies, songs, and other forms of entertainment that portray violent acts and sexually explicit material can influence people to see violence as a way to solve problems and sexually promiscuous behavior as normal. And sadly, if you were to go on the internet, and I'm not endorsing anyone go search for things by any means, get statistics, get where people have done studies. Don't go searching these sites for yourself. You're not going to benefit with that. But the majority of the internet is based on things that are immoral. There's a ton of education on the internet, a ton of it. You can go on I won't mention the name of the website, but there's a website that you can post your videos on. Very popular website. It's been big for years now. And there's a lot of educational things that you can get off of that. We use it a lot in the Peaceful Solution because they have videos that are Creative Commons, so we can use them without copyright infringement. But there's also, you can sit there for hours and hours and hours and watch fruitless videos that absolutely will benefit you none whatsoever. And that's where people usually kind of gravitate to, are the foolish videos that doesn't really help any. Or if you want to go search a topic, Google is one of the best things to find information. You put it in, find out pages and pages of information. But in the same way, if you want to find foolishness or something that is bizarre and can destroy your health, you can find that too, and it's unlimited, and you can find much more of that than you can the educational stuff. So even the internet itself, you're influenced by what you can see. And of course, impressions is a big business. When you go on websites that offer news, you always have impressions come up, and they're coming up from websites or things that they think that you're interested in. They get these from your purchases on Amazon, from any online purchase you made, for subscriptions you have, even your phone will tie into these things. And you can tell what a person's interest is just by going on certain news sites. You can go on, each one of you can go on Drudge Report, for example. And your interest on the internet will pop up in your impressions that are coming up on Drudge where they sell them. And each person's phone will be different because depending on what you're interested in, that's what comes up. That's how well they learn what we're doing and what they can do to sell us even more items. They're trying to influence us because there's interest here. That's where we need the money. Because everybody's trying to make money. That's what business is. But how are we being influenced? Well, we get these things bombarded through us in many different ways. Here, continuing on, it says, in fact, behavior that society deems as unlawful and dangerous is glorified on the screen. And that's where you get into some of the biggest movies. I fly a lot of miles on airlines. And I always go through, because you have Wi-Fi now on airplanes. You've had it for a while now. And if the Wi-Fi is down, you still have unlimited access to watch all the shows that they have free of charge. Just tune in and watch them. And I spent one long flight I had. It was about a 6-hour flight. I'm just flipping through to see what's actually on there. And I thought just one thing educational. If I can find one educational thing, I'll watch it. And I found one episode of Monsters Inside of Me that talked about someone having Toxoplasma gondii. The rest of it was a movie. Don't even want to name the movies, but there's 1 through 5. And it was nothing but murder and mayhem. I mean, just from the beginning of the movie to the end. And I know this because the person that sat beside me in business class was watching the movie. And as I'm watching the monsters inside me, I can see out of the corner of my eye, and I'm watching, and it's just killing and killing and killing and killing. And for 2.5 hours, that's all it was. And I asked the guy, I said, what was the movie actually about? Oh, he was killing the bad guy. How many bad guys were there? Oh, I don't know, but he killed a lot of people. And, I asked him, I said, well, what number is that? I know there's multiple ones. He goes, I've seen 1 through 4. I said, well, what's the difference in between them? Well, in one he kills the Russians, and another one he kills Middle Easterns, and then he just kills a bunch of different people. Oh, okay. So the killing never fixes the problem then, because he's always having to kill people. Yeah, pretty much. That's the way it goes. And I thought, and this is supposed to be, we're supposed to root for this guy, right? It makes no sense whatsoever. If you were to do what that guy does, you're going to be fried in the state of Texas. They're going to gas you. Or not gas, they're just going to give you lethal injection, but that's a death sentence. But these are some of the biggest movies that are on the screens right now. And it's mind-blowing that these things are even lawful to put into the minds of people. You're actually teaching them to do something that's wrong. I want to go back to the self-control unit really quickly, if we could put up our first slide. And this was page 118, and it was the question of the day with what are influences? And we learned that an influence is something or someone who can affect the way you think, feel, and act. So something or someone. It can be a friend, a song you're listening to, a movie you're watching, anything that has the ability to change the way or affect the way you think, feel, and act. That's an influence. Influences can also affect what you value, or they can motivate you to adopt new values. Anything that has the potential to affect what you value also has the potential to affect your character and hence your self-control. Why? Remember what a value is on page 6 of the character unit. It's something that you deem to feel important. We can all have different values. One person might value something their grandmother gave them. One person might value a certain brand of car. One person might value a shirt that they have or a pair of shoes that they have. I mean, it can be endless with values. But when it comes to morality, we should all have that value of making the right choice. No one wants to be stolen from. And sadly, it seems like people that in some of these countries that are impoverished. I just talked to someone last night, someone that's been helping with a peaceful solution for 2 years. They work very hard, and this is a nation where there's not much money. They saved up to buy an iPad and a laptop. And they finally got everything there. And what occurred? Somebody broke in their house this week and stole their iPad and their laptop. Everything they had worked for to get their classes going, to get everything set up, that's what they stole. Why? That's the easiest thing to sell. And it disappears very quickly. And off it goes. And you're not going to find this stuff. I know they got trackers and all this stuff, but you have to have people that help you do it. Because when people steal stuff in these countries that are impoverished, they don't stay in that city. They travel right out of the city to the next because no one's gonna track it down. They know that they have free reign to do that. They don't even have a budget to track stuff like that down. They're not even prosecuting murders, much less stealing iPads and laptops. So these are things that criminals have this ability to do it. And why do they do it? There's no money. There's no jobs. Well, who told them this? Why didn't somebody create jobs? Well, it's easier to steal. Well, who taught them how to steal? Because that's a learned behavior. It's not something you just decide to do. You learn to do it. And, of course, some people do it very well. But continuing on, it says, did you know that your parents or guardians are the most influential people in your life? It is from them that you learn what to value. Your personality and character are developed through the environment that your parents provide for you. And once again, that can be a household of video games and violence, lots of TV, doing what you want to do, or you can also have a TV that's educational, that people are watching things that are educational, but that should also be limited. Children shouldn't grow up in front of a TV. They should, right now they just got out of school here in the United States. And I know school's a lot different than in other countries. In other countries, they're out in the wintertime for us because it's summer there. But here in the United States, most children this summer will sit at home and play video games or watch endless TV all day long. You know, back when I was growing up, when it was summertime, we went outside and we played the whole time. It used to be a punishment to make you stay in your room. Now it's a punishment to tell you to get out of your room, because everybody wants what's in their room. You know, why is it in the room? Because the parents, out of sight, out of mind. Don't come in here doing that. You know, we're watching TV ourselves in here. You're disturbing us. And that's where we're getting to. And we're not getting to, we've got there. And of course, we have to understand that if we want to see changes in our children, we have to make changes as parents if we're doing things that are inappropriate, because those influences are very powerful. But it says, once again, your personality and character are developed through the environment that your parents provide for you. There are many other influences that range from subtle and harmless to obviously dangerous. In fact, some influences are so subtle you may not realize that you're being influenced to think or behave in a particular way. Consider the following case study, and this is, of course, a case study that we use a lot when teaching, because this was a scientifically proven fact that they did, and it's been done many times since then. It says, many years ago, a popular soft drink boosted its sales by flashing a bottle of its product on screen for less than a second while people watched a movie. Within a few minutes, more than half of the people in the theater suddenly felt thirsty and were compelled to buy a bottle of that particular soft drink. None of them realized that they had seen the bottle flashed on the screen prior to becoming thirsty. They all thought that their thirst was normal and that they had made their own decision to buy that particular soft drink. And I remember things how they changed over the years. When I was growing up, for some reason, I don't even know why, I've never looked into it. You couldn't see the name brand on the can they had in their hand if it was a show or something, but you knew it was a Pepsi can or you knew it was a Coke can just because of the color of the can. And that's the influence that they say that people have or companies have. You can just flash a symbol up of something and people automatically know what it is. And you can do that with, even cars. Just show emblems and people can just pick out what they are immediately. Why? Because people are programmed to learn these things. Well, if you can learn all of those things, we can learn education. And the next slide was also on page 118, and this is something important to remember. Influences can generally be placed in two categories, either positive or negative. And on page 119, which is going on to the next slide, we read that what a positive influence was, because we break it down and we want to remind ourselves as we're talking about how we're being influenced that there are positive and negative and what is the difference. Positive influences will motivate you to make choices and decisions that will build your character. Remember, we're always building. We have that foundation of self-control, and when we're building a positive character, we're always adding to it. When we do negative things, we're taking away from it. A positive influence will not conflict with a moral choice, so it won't conflict with keeping the rules. It's impossible to keep a rule and make a bad choice. And I know a lot of people will say, I just had to break the rule just so I could save something here. Save the day. I had to break the rule. Now, there may be situations where things have to be done a certain way, but punching somebody is never going to make it better. Well, he hit me first. I had to defend myself. Well, there's certain instances where the question becomes, it's not the situation of you defending yourself. The problem is how did we get here to begin with where the young man punched you to start with? We need to start addressing all of these. How did we even get to this situation? Because the problem is not you two punching each other. That's the end result of the problem. The problem started long before the punches were ever thrown. And that's the part society has kind of lost perspective on. We only see the end result. Mass shooting today at this school, mass stabbing today here. Car runs through loads of people, this and that. That's the end result of decisions. That's not it's almost like that was the problem. No, it wasn't. That was the end result of the problem. The problem started long before that caused this action to take place. And that's really how we have to start focusing our minds, because these influences are extremely strong. We can persuade people to do what is right or what is wrong just with our own actions and our own words. So once again, positive influences can come in many different forms. They can be a person, an experience, a book that you've read, or even a show that you've seen. For example, your parents have always encouraged you to take your education seriously and to pay attention to the world news. They want you to be aware of what is going on in the world around you. And I watch a lot of world news, and even that can influence you into thinking what is right and wrong. It's not necessarily all correct, and the examples, I give you very quickly. If you watch, and I won't mention who these news agencies are because it's not even worth even talking about them, but there's certain news agencies, if you watch, since we're in a presidential election year, Joe Biden is president. Joe Biden is the absolute most perfect human being on the face of this earth to be a president. Nobody else but him can do it. You can flip the channel just 2 channels up, and they're saying the same thing, but it's President Trump. There is nobody better than President Trump, and if we vote for Biden, we're just going to crumble. And I thought, well, we've been through both of them, and we're crumbling. So I'm not for sure what's going to take place here on this next one. But obviously, there's agendas, and they're trying to influence you to vote for this person. And that's what, billions, used to be millions. Now there's billions of dollars spent on trying to get you to vote for me. I'll do what you need done. You don't even know me. What I need done is some morality put back into the country. That's what I need. And of course, everybody bases, when a president goes into office, how do they base it? I'm going to cut your taxes. I'm going to save you money, 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 money. Why? Because America wants money, 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 money to spend. But that money's worth nothing when you don't have morality. If you work your life to have something stolen, it's not going to help you. If you work your life just to have somebody murder you or take your life, it's not going to help you. If you put your child through the best schools and into college, and they go to college and they overdose on fentanyl or drugs, or somebody does something very harmful to them and ends their life, it doesn't really help you. You can work your whole life and it come to nothing in 5 seconds or less. And these are the things, these are harsh realities that we have to deal with. We just take things for granted that everything's going to be okay, even if we don't make the right choice. And that's not true. And I'm not trying to say what the right choice is between presidents. I would not even want to dare get into that one. But the right choice is based on morality. And I'm not saying presidents are based on morality. I'm saying if anyone wants to be a positive leader, those choices will be based on morality. And then on page 120, if we can go to the next slide, we talked about what negative influences are. And we learned that negative influences can cause you to make choices that are immoral. They break the rules. An immoral choice can have a negative effect on your character. It can result in harm to yourself and others. So just in that alone, you're not responsible to yourself, you're not respectful to yourself, and you're not practicing self-control. That's the only way these things can take place. Like positive influences, negative influences can also come in different forms. For example, the new boy in school tries to talk you into skipping class and going to the arcade. And that's arcade is I see they're coming back, but there's some children that don't know what that is. You might have to explain what an arcade is. A room full of video games is exactly what it is. Now it's in your house, but years ago when I was growing up, it was a place at the mall or somewhere, and it was the arcade. It was just a room full of video games. But I noticed they're making a huge comeback right now. It says, can you recall a negative influence in your life? Well, I kind of just did, actually. What effect did this influence have on you and your ability to make positive choices? Well, I can tell you, I used to go to the arcade rooms when I used to go to the mall when I was a teenager. And I always wanted to play the racing game. That's the one I would spend. You'd go in, and back then you didn't have to get tokens. You used your quarters. And I would spend, if I had $20, I spent the whole $20. And how did it benefit me? Well, the first 3 months I had my driver's license, I got 3 speeding tickets. That's pretty much how much it benefited me. Not one bit. I had to learn my lesson by paying extremely high insurance until I was 21 years old. It wasn't very fun working 2 weeks out of the month just to pay for car insurance. But that's what I got to do because I worked really hard to get there. Absolutely. And then, of course, the last slide we're going to talk about here, this is also off of the bottom page of 120. It says, it's talking about proof of the negative influences from the sources that do affect the way some people behave. And these influences can affect the way emotions such as anger are handled and can contribute to outbursts of aggression and violence. They have also been proven to be a factor in why young people your age, speaking of ages 10 to 13, choose to engage in premarital sex. And a lot of people want to know, and we still get that question to this day, why does the Peaceful Solution use the term premarital sex? Because the Peaceful Solution agrees and complies with all rules of the United States of America when it comes to education in schools. We're not here to promote religion, and the word fornication is taken as religious. So the best way to say premarital, because marriage involves commitment, a contract, and an agreement. In other words, you make a vow, you make a promise. It's something you're supposed to keep. And if you do something before that agreement, that means you're doing something without an agreement. In other words, this is a temporary thing we got going here. And scientific studies have shown that if people tend to do temporary things many times, then we have a huge sexually transmitted disease problem in the United States. So we're only going off of what the rules of the United States allow us to do, along with scientific studies and results of what having relationships without commitment bring. It brings a lot of disease and death. So that's why we continually use the term premarital. It means without commitment. It means you're not you have no intentions of doing anything other than fulfilling, what's in the moment at the time, which is an impulsive decision, and then you're going to walk away from it, which means you're not responsible either. And then you're going to do it again. And scientific studies have shown when everybody's doing it, it's like taking a lot of poison and mixing it in a bowl, and then by the time it's, whoa, what is this? What is this on my hands? Whoa, what is this in other places? Oh, wow, I got pain. What's the pain? Well, and then you have stuff like, and this is very important because these influences, if you don't get children to see these things, they don't think they're important. But go pull the study just on HPV alone, the human papillomavirus. Over 80% of the people in the United States that are positive for the human papillomavirus do not even know they have it right now. That's scary because you cannot get rid of it once you got it. It's just like herpes. It's the gift that keeps on giving. You can get a drug to put it to sleep, but it's going to wake up eventually and you need a stronger sleeping pill for it. And that's what those drugs really act like. They act like sleeping pills for the virus. But sooner or later, the virus you can't give it a sleeping pill strong enough because now it affects your kidneys, your liver, the medication to make it go to sleep so you don't have an outbreak just can't be managed anymore because your organs are now going to suffer, which they're suffering the whole time to begin with. As we brought before, a doctor here not long ago was talking about those who have syphilis. And he said, and once again, this goes in the responsibility of why you shouldn't do it. He literally explained that how syphilis can lie dormant in your body for years. And even though it's dormant, it's still destroying your body. And you don't see the effects of it because it's doing it so gradual. It's kind of like cancer. If you've ever known anybody that has cancer, it's a horrible thing, because they call it a silent killer. That and high blood pressure, they're called the silent killers. Because a lot of people can have cancer for years. I'll give you an example of my dad. When my dad realized he had cancer, he was 57 years old, and he had colon cancer. The doctor, when he looked at him, he said, from the way your cancer formed, you most likely got it in your mid-30s. And that's how long it took for it to develop to what it is today. That's a long time because he had no clue that he had it up until he developed a huge knot on his side. And that's when he finally realized it. Didn't lose massive weight, didn't do any of these other things. He just developed a knot on his side, and that's when it became known. Well, making bad choices can be kind of like cancer. You don't really see the damage you're doing to yourself until, oh, hell, now something's really wrong. What am I going to do? Well, there's nothing we can do for you now. It's already too far gone. But I thought this only occurred to other people. Well, one thing we have to look at in society, look at the generations before us. A lot of brilliant people came before us. A lot of people that helped make changes to society. Look at how far we've come since the Model T Ford to today. From the flight at Kitty Hawk to today. Look at all of these technological advances. And you know what took place with all of these just brilliant people? They died. And that's just a sad fact of life. But life has gotten much more challenging since they've done what they did, and immorality has grown in abundance. So getting back here to how we're being influenced, it says, in fact, once again, we want to read this just to get it in our mind again, that society, in fact, behavior that society deems as unlawful and dangerous is glorified on the screen. For example, in some of the movies, the bad guy is actually the hero who gets away with stealing millions of dollars, murdering all the cops, and gets the girls of his dreams. It could be your worst nightmare. Did you know that if you continue to watch violent movies, by the time you're 18, you would have witnessed over 200,000 acts of violence? Just imagine anything you want to do. I remember Michael Jordan talking about when he would practice, him and Kobe Bryant, and I only bring them up because they were known. It is extremely well known that these men would be in the gym at 4 o'clock in the morning. When they were playing professional basketball, they were the first ones in the gym and the last ones to leave because they wanted to be elite. They wanted to be the one everybody was looking at. And so they worked that way to do it. And I remember Michael Jordan saying that he probably practiced 100,000 free throws in his life. And I thought that was a lot. And when I seen this statistic, I thought, if you see 200,000 acts of violence, you put in twice the work of a man who went into work at 4 o'clock in the morning and left at 7 and 8 o'clock at night just to be a basketball star and make millions of dollars. You put in twice as much work to learn how to murder and mayhem and destroy. And think of any task that you want to learn. Any challenge you want to practice. Remember, you want to value, imitate, practice. If you want to become great at something, you practice it. Imagine doing it 200,000 times. How great will you become? And then if you watch something 200,000 times, well, how great will you become? So how many people would watch the same class over and over and over? I do know some people that take education seriously. They will watch classes. I know there's some classes I'll watch 7 or 8 times just to get the gist of it. But I know people that will watch a movie 20 times and they already know how it's going to end, but they'll still watch it. And it's kind of bizarre. I've always wondered, how do you get through the whole thing to begin with? 2.5 hours of wasting your life. I don't even know how you made it through the whole thing to begin with, but to do it 5 or 10 times, I can't even comprehend that one. But, people get pulled into these things, and it's because of values. What do they value? But once again, think about this thing, and you want to stress this to your students. How efficient will you be if you do something 200,000 times? And if you're learning to do something the wrong way, think about how efficient you would be. And remember, the study that was done by the Kaiser Family Foundation and the Self-Control Unit, we learned that there's also 14,000 sexual innuendos, and that was in 2001. It is much worse today than it was back then. Back then it was the shows. Now it's the commercials. Everything that sex sells. That's the big thing on the TV, the internet, and everywhere else. Sex sells. You want to sell something, this is how you do it. And that's the way everybody does it. But continuing on here, it says the figure does not include other forms of hostility that you will see in real life. It's up to you to be aware of how you're being influenced. So that's our responsibility. And we control whether we watch it or whether we don't, whether we allow ourselves to be part of it or whether we don't. If you respond with violence to situations that upset or anger you, and remember, anger is a choice. No one makes you angry. We choose to become angry. Recognize that it's not normal and could lead you or someone else to getting hurt. Make responsible choices in regards to managing your emotions. Do not make the same mistake that so many others have made and influence to handle frustrations with violence and aggression. By handling anger and frustration in nonviolent ways, you can keep yourself and others safe. Once again, we're actually helping protect others. We're influencing others in a positive way by doing that. Remember, we are all morally responsible to each other. We should be morally responsible to each other. We should care. And think about how are some ways that people are immoral every day? And if you're teaching high school students, you really want to bring this out to them. What is one way that people are immoral every day? You don't really see it that much in the city we live in right here. In Abilene, you see it a little bit more. You go to Dallas or Houston or Washington, D.C. or New York City or Chicago or L.A., you'll see a lot more. It's called road rage. People just ignore the rules that are supposed to govern driving. And younger people, I was the same way. Speed limit was a suggestion. When the green light turned green, my foot was on the gas and I went. Didn't really pay attention to what the speed limit said. I just went around the cars that were in front of me. And when we got out of school, there was a long strip of road that went from where I went to high school at all the way to the other side of town. And sadly to say, that was a racetrack for us when we got out of school. And I look back at how we did it back then. I'm amazed that no one got killed back then. People did get killed on the motorcycles that were doing it, though, when I went to high school. But the cars, they never did. But we made a lot of stupid choices and a lot of irresponsible choices because the state troopers were sitting out there every day. And we still did it. And every day somebody got a ticket. And we just didn't have enough sense to care. We thought, it's nothing. That's a ticket. It's only $100. And then you get your insurance bill in. And that's $300. Well, when does that go away? 7 years, something like that. I don't remember how long. I know it was 21 for me. It took 5 years. So, and you pay dearly for it. But it's almost like the care isn't there when you're a young person unless someone can get that in your mind. And, and I had great parents that talked to me and took my car keys away and literally told me, you're the one that's going to pay for all this. And after the third time, yeah, you're right. I'm working 2 weeks out of the month just to pay insurance. So I'm giving 80 hours of my life every week or every month just to pay for insurance because I didn't respect the speed limit. And that's really what set in my mind. But sadly, if I would have just listened to the people that were teaching me, I'd have never been in that situation. I could have prevented myself from doing that and saved a lot of money back then. And, I'm blessed I never hurt anybody, because you can't undo that. Hit somebody, kill somebody. Sometimes we didn't make bad choices, or we didn't get bad results, negative results, because we were making great choices. It's just something allowed us not to be able to hurt somebody because we did. You can have somebody that kills somebody, and you can have somebody that never killed anybody, and they could be doing the same stupid thing. It's just one situation presented itself in a way to where this took place and another one didn't. So if we're doing things that are immoral, just for the fact you can say, well, I never killed anybody, but you could have. If you could have brought harm to somebody, that's showing you should have never done it. And that's what we really need to consider. And in getting that into the mind of a teenager, well, I was a very hard-headed teenager growing up, and I had great teachers. And I still didn't hurt anybody, but what I did could have led to people getting hurt, which was very immoral. It was very ignorant to do. So the challenge is getting this into the mind of people. But continuing on, it says, do not make the same mistake once again that so many others have made by being influenced to handle frustrations with violence and aggression. By handling anger and frustration in nonviolent ways, you can keep yourself and others safe. Once again, remember we are all morally responsible to each other. And of course, here it says, begin a positive, this was the homework assignment that is to be sent home. Being a positive moral example to others is one way to change society. What are some other ways you can help educate others about the importance of a positive character and how to be morally responsible to others? Well, that's what they're supposed to list. And of course, you see some examples of answers given here by the Peaceful Solution. And you can include, write your congressman and ask character education to be mandatory part of school curriculum. Or you can write your local senator, John Cornyn, and ask him about getting it put into the prisons. He would be a great one here in the state of Texas, just to mention his name. He is on the Judiciary Committee. Hopefully he could do something to help get it in. Or, other senators who are part of the Judiciary Committee, write them and ask them about getting these things in. Write your local congressman, your state representatives, go to your city council. These are things that have all been done before, and you'll be surprised how, this was done in Laredo, Texas, and it ended up being part of all the schools' curricula. It was done in Houston, Texas, but there was only 2 schools that actually took it into Houston. The ones that did, it was a part of it. We had to go in and put the program on every computer in every school, teach every teacher how to teach the program. It was a huge job. And sadly, it stayed there until they changed principals. And when the principal changed, the programs left. Even though the principal that was there was bragging about the results it was bringing. It was making a change in the school. The next principal that came in didn't want to do it. They just wanted to stick with the curricula that was required from the state of Texas. And that means, state of Texas should implement some morality into the education. So once again, here's some examples you can have. Mandate character education in prisons. You would think that's already being done, but it's not, sadly. Offer character education as parenting classes. That is something for anyone that is interested, no matter what country you're in. That is something that we are offering free. If you can get any facilities whatsoever where you can get people together and you just have internet to where you can watch a class. If it's in English, it'll be taught from here in Abilene. If it's in Spanish, it can be taught from here in Abilene or from certain places in Mexico that are actually teaching these classes for you. If it's in Portuguese, they'll be taught out of Brazil. If you need it in Swahili, it'll be taught out of Kenya. If you need it in Ibu, it'll be taught out of Nigeria. If you need it in Filipino, it'll be taught out of the Philippines. If you need it in French, it's Ghana. You probably thought it was France, but no, it's Ghana or Benin, either one of those countries. But we have people that are training to do these things, and they're wanting to do, and these are free of charge. We'll send you the books free of charge. All you have to do is just get a room and get the people together. That's all you have to do. And we'll teach the classes. And the parenting classes is one of the most powerful classes that a parent can go through, especially if you were in a single family home and you never understood what it meant. And here you are, trying to make a marriage work, plus be a parent. We got to all be trained. All of us have to be trained. Even if you think you had the ideal family. I grew up with a mom and a dad and brothers, and all of that, and everything seemed ideal, but there's still an enormous amount to learn. And that's one thing that we offer. And then, of course, we have volunteered to teach children in community programs, summer camps, after-school programs, and daycare centers. That is something that's going all around the world right now. People are volunteering to learn to teach this program, and then they're actually teaching it. And this is all around the world. Advertise the peaceful solution on bulletin boards, infomercials, television programs, and other media tools. And of course, social media, which was not even around when we wrote these books. MySpace hadn't even come out yet, or was just coming out. Those are great places to put these things up. And that's why all of these classes are online for everyone to see. And then here at the very bottom of the page it says, a solid education must include how to develop a positive character. Now, solid education, that's much more than reading, writing, and arithmetic. We're talking about implementing character education on how to make positive choices. We as society, the one thing that we have to stop doing because it's very irresponsible is looking at young adults and adults themselves, children, young adults, all the way up until their older years, looking at people and saying, well, you should have known better. Can someone explain why someone should know better if they were never taught? Well, you should have known better that stealing is wrong. Really, if you grew up in a household and your parents survived by stealing things, you really think that someone's going to see that as wrong when that's how they survived? I've taught people who grew up in families that stole things continually. And they're stealing things themselves, and they're trying to get out of it because it becomes, well, man, I can spend 20 minutes stealing or a day working. I'd rather steal. If you grew up in a family that was using drugs and selling drugs, do you really think it's odd that a child grows up doing the same thing? Perfectly normal. So we have to become responsible as a society and realize there's an educational change that has to take place. If you can do arithmetic, that's great. If you can do calculus and all of these other things, that's excellent. Advanced math, all of these things are beneficial. If you're into poetry or you're into writing novels, those things are really great too. All of those things, biographies, a lot of education come from that. But if we do all of these things and we don't implement the very basis of morality and teach each other how to be responsible in society, we fail. Everything is over. So we're going to stop right there. In the next class, we're going to do the What I Have Learned on page 116, and we'll get through this. That will allow William to pick up on the chapter 7. So we're going to stop here on page 116. We'll start back with What I Have Learned in the first point, and our next class is going to be May the 29th. That's this Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Thank you once again for joining us.